Welcome to Chess to Impress, and today we're going to talk about interference. What is interference in chess? In chess, it is when you move one of your pieces in between your opponent's pieces to break their support of one another. How can white avoid being checkmated on g2? For example, in this position, the a8 bishop supports the queen on e4. And if you take a look at this very carefully, the queen threatens to checkmate on g2. Apparently, there is nothing we can do to avoid the checkmate. But what we can do is that we can break the bishop from supporting the queen. So we play a move like knight c6. What this move does is it interferes and breaks the communication between the bishop and the queen. Now, if queen captures g2, this is good for white because this isn't a checkmate. The bishop is no longer helping the queen to checkmate on g2, and as a result of which the king can just capture the queen. Perfect. Position number two. Let's take a look at position number two. Position number two is also very easy. In this position, these two black rooks support each other. So what should white play to break the communication and interfere with the black rooks? So the correct move the white should play to break the communication is to play bishop e5 check. Correct? And for example, if they were to take with one of their rooks, if they take with the rook on e6, you capture back with your pawn on e5. If they capture with the rook on e4, you still capture with your pawn on on d4, and you go move your pawn to e5. And if they were to move their king, because it's a check, they need to take care of this threat. If they move their king to g8, then it doesn't really matter. But if I had to capture between the rook on e6 or the rook on e4, I would love to play rook on e6 as the king controls these three squares, and it allows my pawn uh, to be pushed, and eventually there is a chance that this pawn might get promoted with the help of the other pawn on c3. All right, let's take a look at this position, position number three. Where does white have pressure on black's position? If you take a look at this queen on g4 along with the rook on g3, both of them create a battery, and the queen, with the help of the rook, is aiming at the g7 square. For example, I would love to play queen g7, which will result in a checkmate. But what's stopping white from capturing on g7? It's the black queen which sits on b7, which avoids white queen to go to g7. So what do? We need to interfere such that the queen no longer protects the pawn. And the correct way to interfere is to be a little confrontational, right? By playing rook f7, right? It is very confronting. The rook confronts the queen. If the queen captures, we capture with our bishop, and then we can play queen g7 next. If they capture with the bishop, the queen no longer supports the pawn, which means we can simply play queen to g7, and that will result in a checkmate. Position number four. This is a very interesting position. The white queen threatens to capture the black queen, but I cannot do it just yet because the rook protects the queen. What we need to do is we need to interfere between the rook and the queen such that the rook no longer supports the queen, and also the king's position, which is on b7, helps white. How do we interfere? Yes, you're correct. You move either one of your knight. It's totally your choice. You can move either the c knight or the e knight to d6. Let's say we play knight c to d6. Now the thing is, if the pawn captures the knight, the rook is no longer supporting the queen, which means we have successfully interfered, and we can capture the queen on d4. If they capture back with the rook, we don't have to worry just yet. We can sacrifice another knight. Knight captures d6 along with the check. If pawn captures, we still end up winning the queen. Queen cannot really capture the knight because it makes no sense. If the queen captures the knight, we end up winning the queen as well. All right, and the final position, which is position number five. In this position, take a look at the queen and the rook. They create a battery, and I would really love to play a move like queen captures e2, which will result in a checkmate. But I cannot do that just yet because of the sneaky little queen on a6, which protects the e2 square. So how do we interfere between the queen and the bishop? By being more confronting and breaking the communication. So we play a move like bishop b5, right? If we play the move bishop b5 over here, this is game over because if the pawn takes, the queen no longer supports the bishop, which will result in queen e2 game over. And if they play a move like queen captures b5, we can simply get the queen with our rook. And on our next move, we can play a move like queen captures e2. So to conclude, what is interference? And interference in chess is when you move one of your pieces in between your opponent's pieces to break their support of one another, interfere and block the communication.